Hello, my lovely listeners. I'm Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns. Welcome to this episode of Real Health and Weight Loss.
Hello, Dr. Lucy. How are you this fine morning?
Wonderful, Dr. Mary. Wonderful. Again, another sleep. I know I bang on about that a lot. But also I think I've actually had a really just wonderful week at work, met some beautiful people, and, I think that just adds, doesn't it, to your well-being if you're feeling connected.
Oh, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I love people. People are the best part of my work and life. People are great. Dr. Lucy, today we are discussing an issue very, very common to our people, to people who are wanting to lose weight and reclaim their health, wanting to redefine their relationship with food, their relationship with themselves, and that is non-hungry eating, also called emotional eating. Tell us more about this phenomenon, emotional eating.
Okay, so I'm sure many of you identify as being emotional eaters or comfort eaters. So many people come in and say, Lucy, I don't know what to do. I'm a comfort eater. Okay, so we talk about that. Now, basically what happens is when we have an emotion that we don't like or that feels uncomfortable, we want to get rid of it. And not all of us have been taught the tools to do that or the tools on how to sort of hold emotions lightly. They become this overwhelming feeling that we have. And so we go, I don't want this. What can I do to get rid of it? And we'll use a tool. For some people, that's food. For some people, it's other things. For some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's smoking. For some people, it's shopping. They feel terrible. Oh, I'll go and buy something. That'll make me feel better. And for some of us, it's any of those sorts of things. So what we need to, work out is that we don't actually have to do that. We don't have to eat food to deal with emotions. That sounds obvious, but that's a revelation for some people. They go, what? What they try and do is just white knuckle their way through it. It'll be like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I'm not eating the Tim Tams. I'm not eating them. I don't want the chocolate. I'm not doing this. And it's this sort of just fighting with yourself. Or alternatively, what happens is people have some food to negate these emotions. They then feel guilty and shameful and hopeless. And that all feels uncomfortable. So they then do the hate, berate, throw in the towel and continue on and just keep numbing that emotion with more and more food. Now, the thing I like to tell people is, you know what? It's not actually your fault. It is not your fault that this is a tool, because we have some biological drive for the fact that food does make us feel good. And that's come from our ancestral times, whereas if there was no sort of biological drive for eating in the olden days, and again, I'm not talking 1990s here, I'm talking like 30,000 years ago, was quite hard. You had to go and literally, hunt your food and all of those sorts of things, which we don't have to do anymore. So there was this bonus, if you like, apart from satisfying just your hunger, you got a little dopamine hit from food. It was like, yay, good, excellent. But our modern day society has changed where we no longer have to hunt for our food. We can just open a fridge and there it is. And the processing industry has made it so that these food products maximize that dopamine. So we have this situation where we have a negative emotion. We have a product easily at our hands that's legal, that's cheap, that's highly available, that will fix that immediately for about 5 minutes, and then it wears off. So then we keep trying to fix it and nothing's happening. And then we go into that spiral. So it's that guilt, shame spiral that I love talking about. well, I don't love talking about it because it's really awful to be in, but I love, I guess, helping people navigate their way out of that. So the thing is that recognizing that what you are doing, it is just a tool. It's not good. It's not bad. There's no emotion that needs to be attached to this tool. What it is, though, is whether this tool is helpful for you or not. And I'm assuming that if you get to the point where your health is compromised by your weight, that the tool is no longer helpful. And that's all it is. It's not that you're weak or hopeless or useless. It's just that you have a tool that you have been taught that is no longer serving you well. And now it's time to get a new tool. And that's it. We don't need any more judgment, any more than that tool. And sometimes, and this comes back to what Mary was saying last week, when you're learning a new tool, it's going to take a little while. You don't suddenly develop a skill for something you've been doing that you need to sort of unlearn and relearn. That doesn't happen overnight. And it can take weeks, months for some people, years, and it doesn't matter. Progress, not perfection. The key, though, is understanding that as adults, it's weird, as adults, we expect to be able to do something straight away. If I say to you, this is just a tool, you go, yeah, you're right. Oh my God, you're so right. Okay, good, excellent. I'm not doing it anymore. And we think that we should be able to do that straight away. We expect in children, if they're learning something new, that it's going to take a while. But as adults, we have this expectation upon ourselves that once we know something, once we've had something, a light shed on it, that we should just be able to adapt like the next day. And when we don't, then we go back to that, oh my God, I'm hopeless, can't do anything.
So emotional eating, comfort eating is a tool that people use understandably to deal with yucky feelings, negative feelings, to help soothe and numb away negative feelings. And when that tool, as you mentioned, is no longer helpful, when that tool is in fact harmful to our health, what kind of tools can people adopt to help them navigate yucky emotions?
Well, it's a two-pronged approach. The first thing is that accepting that what are termed negative emotions are normal. We spend our lives trying to seek, the happiness seekers is often what I call us. And it's this idea that life is supposed to be entirely happy all the time, which is obviously not true. And I'm going to tell you a little story that I've told a few people. And it's about when one of my daughters was about 12 or 13. She had a flock of chickens. And, she would feed them. And she had one favourite chook called Toffee. And we have a lot of animals that are named after food. Don't ask me what's going on there. But Toffee was this little fluffy silky who would just be sort of carried around, in a wind cheater, her hoodie thing in one of those giant pockets. A very tame chook. Anyway, Rubes went off to school camp and I was out flinging a bit of, some old vegetable scraps to the chooks. And I look over and notice that one of them is looking a bit poorly as she's sort of leaning against the chook house. So I went over and looked at her and it was Toffee. I pick her up, and as I pick her up, I realise this chicken is emaciated. So this little chook has been unwell for a little while, unbeknownst to me, hidden in amongst all her fluff. So I bring her inside and for some reason decide to give her a bath. It seemed like an appropriate thing to do. And I pop her in a big box with lovely sawdust and, I'm there trying to sort of resuscitate this chicken with, an eyedropper and whatever food chickens eat. And after 24 hours, this was not going particularly well. So I took her to the vet and the vet said, no, look, I'm really sorry, but this chicken's on its way to chicken heaven. So I left the vets empty-handed, and the next day went to pick up Ruby from her school camp. So we're driving home and she's listing off all of our animals, of which we have a myriad, and we get to the chickens. "How's Toffee?" she says. And of course I have to do the whole, "Oh, well, Toffee died." And she just looks at me, her little eyes like big saucers, absolutely dumbfounded. And then she just crumples her face. She's bawling. I'm bawling. We're all bawling on the way home. It's just that overwhelming grief. And so I did probably what lots of you would do, what I did, what happened to me. And I said to her, "Let's go to the cafe and get a milkshake." So we did that. We pulled in and we dried our tears. And you know what? I would have bought her anything in that shop. If she'd said to me, "I want that giant cake," I would have said, "Yeah, sure, no worries." Because two things. I wanted to fix her pain, but also I needed her pain fixed because I was uncomfortable at looking at my child experiencing pain. So I needed it fixed for me. So we fixed it, hopped back in the car, drove home, had a little funeral for Toffee, but barely spoke about it at all. Barely spoke about grief, barely spoke about the idea that grief is normal, that grief hurts, that it is painful, and that it, represents love. We didn't speak anything like that. We just had milkshakes. So part of, therefore, emotional eating is, basically I set up a story in there that if you feel sad, go and have a milkshake. Now I realise doing that once is not going to set her up for a lifetime of emotional eating, but it was further evidence to the stories that are already in her head that you can fix negative emotions with food.
And so many people have those stories in their heads. I certainly know that I do. Those stories are certainly lodged in my mind. And I had similar instincts recently when our dog died and my daughter was suffering grief there. I can completely, utterly and totally understand why we want to medicate away negative emotions with food. It's completely understandable.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I say to people is it is actually okay to have negative emotions, and they actually do go away if we let them. So when we have positive emotions, so if we're having happiness, we don't try and get rid of happiness, but it does go. That's why we're not happy all the time. It just goes away on itself. The same with the negative emotions. When you hold them lightly, they will pass. But what we spend a lot of time doing is suppressing them, pushing them down, and food is a tool for that. And sometimes actually visualize the literal idea that you are pushing down by feeding yourself. But we use a lovely analogy about with a beach ball. If you're standing in a pool and you're holding a beach ball and you can hold it on the surface of the pool quite lightly, when you try and suppress it, so you push it down, it takes a lot more energy. And if you sort of stop concentrating for a bit, it just pops up. And this is what happens with our emotions that we suppress. Instead of feeling them, processing them, and allowing them to go, we stuff them down and then they come out when we're not ready. So sitting, it's a hard thing to do, but sit with that emotion. You can talk to somebody about it to help you process it. Burying it with food doesn't help. It comes out eventually.
So it's something that you discuss a lot, Dr. Lucy, learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Negative emotions are natural and normal, and we don't need to push them away.
Totally. And I think the thing is that the first time you're just sitting with it, it feels really, really hard. But it's almost, again, like a new experience. Anything that is a new experience is difficult. You can practice your uncomfortable muscle. You get really good at it. And so now when something's really uncomfortable for me, the story in my head is, oh, this is interesting. This is an uncomfortable moment. I feel sad, angry, whatever it is. That's okay. I will sit there with it and it will pass. I don't need to do anything. I used to be a very big emotional eater. And, the amount of food that I ate, particularly with emotion, I had a few stories. One of my stories, which is common, and again, I can see how it became set up, was particularly if I had a hard task, a hard administrative task, or something that was a little bit boring to do, I would make it more pleasant by having food with it. And that came from study days. Study was boring. That was my story. Study boring, awful, so much better with a bag of cheesels and a block of chocolate. A bad day at work, a difficult encounter, and people say, go home. And, these days, again, as an adult, people will say to me, go home and have a glass of wine. Again, it's a little story and it's another technique. But people will say, I'm going home to eat a block of chocolate. And you will get validation for that. They'll go, yeah, you'll feel better after that. So just learning to change those stories and recognize that you actually have the power to sit with uncomfortable emotions and allow them to pass. Now, there are some things that you can do in the meantime that will make you feel better. Things like we talk a lot about going outside, spending a bit of time in the sun, not the blazing sun, morning sun, doing some exercise. They are also techniques to help you with this concept of the dopamine. So it is this two-pronged approach. One is acceptance of negative emotions and that they're normal. And the other one is using techniques that will serve you well, so healthy, to help you through that period while you're waiting to process. So that is, again, connection with a friend, spending some time in nature, doing some exercise. They're all the wonderful things, sleep, my superpower, that you can do to help you process this uncomfortable feeling, none of which involves suppressing it with food, alcohol, cigarettes, gambling, all of those sorts of things. Maz, I think that's probably enough for today.
I have loved this episode. Accepting that emotional eating is a tool, not hating or berating yourself for doing it, and instead learning new tools, including accepting the emotions and other healthy ways to help you process them. Absolutely beautiful. Goodbye, everybody. Can't wait till our next episode.
Bye, lovely. See you all soon. So, my lovely listeners, that ends this episode of Real Health and Weight Loss. I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
And I'm Dr. Mary Barson. We're from Real Life Medicine. To contact us, please visit rlmedicine.com.
And until next time, thanks for listening.